Well, hello and welcome back to Waffle-Free Stories for Kids. It's Tina here. I'm so glad you could join me. Now, if you have just come from the last story, then you know what happened. If you have not heard the first story, then go back and listen to the first story, because this is story number 2 in the wild adventures of Jack, Horace and Gemima as they climb deeper into Noodlewood. Now, you know how this works. All of these stories are inspired by words sent in by you. So this story is inspired by 3 words. 1 word sent in by Henley in Canada. Another word was sent in by Ava in Australia, and another word was sent in by Sophia in Australia. So yes, this tells you that you can play this more than once. So what did we got? From Henley, we have dragon. From Ava, we have mum. And from Sophia, we have pig. So we have dragon, we have mum, and we have pig. Oh, okay. What are we going to do? Right. So the end of the last story, we found Jack, Horace and Gemima, after a wild adventure, I will let you go find out what happened, settling down for a good night's sleep, because they were sure that by the next morning they would be able to find their way home. But here's the problem. You know, when you are sleeping in an unfamiliar place, sometimes when you wake up, everything just looks different to what it was before you fell asleep. And that's what happened to Jack, Horace and Gemima. They woke up and it was like the river was different. It seemed further away from them somehow. Rufus, the buffalo, he was gone. The trees looked thicker somehow and closer to them. There were no paths. Everything was different and strange and weird. Jack climbed to the top of a tree and he looked, but all he could see were trees. Gemima thought she saw a path. She followed it, but it went nowhere. So finally, after finishing the last remnants of the picnic from the day before, they sat there and they thought how to get home, where to go, because north, south, east and west, they couldn't even begin to guess. And it was sitting there in all the quiet, thinking of what to do next and hoping the other one would come up with a really good idea, that they heard crying. This got their attention. They began to look around. They looked between some stones and behind a bush and underneath a tree stump and in a little hole in a hillside. And it's like, where is that crying come from? It was Gemima, who looked inside a tree stump, and there at the bottom, a tiny little pig. Tiny, cute little, squeeze. Tiny little pig, big eyes, tears streaming down his face. Oh, my mommy, oh, my mommy, I don't know my puppy. Gemima picked the little pig up. All he would do is cry and say that he wanted to go home to his mum. Well, Jack, Horace and Gemima thought for not even a moment. Now, if they couldn't get home, that didn't mean they couldn't help this little guy find his way home. And so they sat and thought for a bit. They went this way, then this way, and then they stopped and they thought, hang on, where does a pig live in Noodlewood? I don't know. It was Horace who came up with a brilliant idea. No, what he said, we follow the tracks. Because if the little pig started at home and ended up here, there's going to be tracks. At the other end of the tracks is going to be his mum. It's going to be his house, right? Right? Yes, right? Genius! Genius idea! Brilliant! And off they went. They followed the tracks this way. They followed the tracks this way. They went that way, and then they went back, and then they found themselves back where they started. What? Whoa! This little pig had been lost, but they kept on going, been here finally. And all the time, this little pig was like, so they kept following and hugging and petting and comforting. It's like, yeah, we're going to get you home, little guy. And then suddenly the little pig began to squeal. And it was only when Jack, Horace, and Gemima turned around that they saw what the little pig was squealing at. Because right then, out of the bushes, big, huge wings spanning the length of buses came flying out of the bushes and above the treetops. The greatest, biggest, most furious-looking dragon they had ever seen. Oh, her wings puffed up. Her chest was green and gold. Her face was like and the mouth. Jack, Horace, and Gemima held onto this little pig, and they ran. Now, if you think they ran fast when they ran away from Rufus the buffalo, oh man, they were running a whole lot faster when they were running away from that dragon. They ran under the trees, through a valley, over a hill, down a mountain. They only stopped when they came to an edge of a cliff. With nowhere else to go, they turned around. What's going to happen? What are we going to do? And it's in that moment that Gemima was so frightened and so worried that she lost her hold on the wriggly little pig, who dropped to the ground, squealed, and ran into the arms of the dragon. Mummy! The little pig squealed. And the dragon picks up the little kidney. Kiss the little pig and hug the little pig so close. And then she said to Jack, Horace, and Gemima, "Thank you for saving my baby." Then turned to the little baby pig and said, "You shouldn't run off into the forest like that. You are very lucky to be found by the Hoofmagraws." And with that, she reached into a little pouch under her scales, and the dragon pulled out 3 threads of light. She gave 1 thread to Jack. She gave 1 thread to Gemima. She gave another thread to Horace. And she said, "Look after these threads of light. When you are in most need of courage, hold on to this light and you will find your way." And with that, the great dragon, cradling her little baby pig, flew off across the horizon and over the mountains, leaving Jack, Horace, and Gemima wondering what was going to happen next. Well, we're gonna have to just wait and see. Okay, folks, that's it. Time to go get some juice, time to go get a cup of tea, time to go and have a little bit of a break, and I will see you in the very next story. I have no idea what's coming across the horizon, but in the meantime, go to www.𝗓𝗓𝗏constant.com for all of the other shenanigans. All right, I will see you in the next one. Bye-bye now.